Have you ever seen an animal fight so fiercely for someone it loves that your own heart stops beating? Under the scorching sun of the Botswana savanna, in 2016, a lion faced the impossible to save his cub. And what happened years later? Well, it'll leave you speechless. Picture this scene: the sun blazing like hot coal, the cracked earth releasing a dry, suffocating scent, and a low, determined roar piercing the silence. That was the sound of a father who refused to give up. This is the true story of a lion, his playful cub, and an entire village learning the true meaning of paternal love. It was a devastating drought, turning rivers into dust and hope into despair. The Saranga savanna in Botswana was on its knees. The lion's mate, a strong yet starving lioness, didn't survive. Alone with his cub, the lion walked more than 40 kilometers under the relentless sun, the little one stumbling beside him, desperate for just a drop of water. Can you feel the weight of that journey? With each step, the hot wind carried the scent of dry grass, while the exhausted cub still hopped playfully, as if life were a grand adventure. Who hasn't looked at an animal and admired such pure courage and will to live? But fate loves to test even the strongest. After days wandering, father and cub reached a quiet village, where something unexpected happened. The cub, as curious as any youngster, fell into an open drain. And the lion? He refused to leave. For 24 hours, he stayed there, growling softly, eyes fixed on the dark hole. The whole village came to a halt. Initially frightened, the villagers soon recognized something far greater than fear: loyalty. Have you ever felt an animal teach you what it means never to abandon someone in need? This isn't just a story about a lion saving his cub, it's about survival, sacrifice, and a bond between species that makes us believe in miracles. If touching stories like this move you, hit the like button and subscribe, so you don't miss any of them. But what exactly happened on that dark night, with the lion tirelessly guarding the drain? Brace yourself, because what comes next is even more breathtaking. The sun in Saranga, Botswana, in 2016, was unforgiving. It scorched the savanna with a heat that made the air shimmer, as if the earth itself had a fever. A lion, with a tangled mane and a lean body, walked with heavy steps, the sound of his paws echoing like a slow drum on the parched ground. By his side, a cub with big eyes stumbled but still let out playful purrs, as if the drought was just an adventure. Have you ever seen such a tiny creature carry so much courage? The lion, who we'll call Tao, looked at the little one with a mix of pride and worry. He knew the wild nature showed no mercy. And now, without the lioness, it was all on him. Tao's mate, a lioness with golden eyes, couldn't withstand the hunger. The 2016 drought was cruel, turning rivers into crusts of mud and herds into memories. When she fell, the silence that followed screamed louder than any roar. Tao stayed by her side for hours, as if he could bring her back by sheer will. But the cub, who we'll call Queasy, licked his father's muzzle, pulling him back to life. Can you imagine the weight of that? Losing someone you love and still having to push on for the one who depends on you? Tao stood up, the smell of dry dust in his nostrils, and began the journey, 40 kilometers in search of water, with Queasy bouncing by his side. Every step was a battle. The hot wind carried the distant sound of hyenas laughing, a reminder of the wild nature that has no pity. Tao kept Queasy close, using his body as a shield against the relentless sun. At night, the cold cut like a knife, and the lion wrapped his cub in his mane, warming him. Survival wasn't just about finding water, it was about carrying paternal love in every choice. Queasy, with his clumsy paws, sometimes stopped to bite a rock, as if it were a toy. Tao gave him a gentle nudge, and the cub kept going, trusting. Who hasn't looked at an animal and felt they understand your soul? Days dragged on, and the savanna seemed endless. The horizon shimmered with mirages of water that never came. Tao felt weakness in his legs, but animal instinct kept him moving. One afternoon, Queasy stopped, exhausted, and lay on the hot ground. Tao licked the cub's face, as if saying, "Hold on, little one." Just imagine, a father who can't stop, even when the whole world seems to give up. Then, in the distance, a different shimmer appeared. Not a mirage. A village. Adobe houses, a well, life. Tao quickened his pace, Queasy running behind, tail wagging. But what would they find there? Salvation or danger? The village was quiet, almost eerily silent. The sound of a rooster crowing in the distance broke the stillness, but it sent a chill down the spine. Tao and Queasy approached cautiously. The cub, curious as ever, darted ahead, sniffing everything. And then, the unthinkable happened. In a blink, Queasy was gone. A hole. An open manhole, hidden in the shadows. Tao stopped, heart racing, and let out a roar that shook the village. Think about it for a second. Your child, your reason to fight, trapped where you can't reach. How would Tao face that dark night, with Queasy trapped at the bottom of a manhole? The silence of the village was shattered by Tao's roar, a sound that seemed to carry all the pain in the world. Queasy was trapped at the bottom of the manhole, his little paws scraping the wet concrete, echoing like a desperate call. Tao stood at the edge, eyes wide, body tense. He didn't understand what the hole was, but he knew his little one was down there. The musty smell of the manhole mixed with Queasy's fear. Have you ever felt that tightness in your chest when someone you love is in danger? Tao didn't move, growling low, as if defying fate. But how do you save someone out of reach? The villagers, woken by the roar, peeked from their windows, hearts pounding. At first, there was fear. A lion in the village isn't an everyday sight. But then they saw Tao. He wasn't attacking, wasn't threatening. He just whimpered, a hoarse sound that cut to the soul, as he pawed the ground. Dust rose, glinting under the faint light of a flashlight someone aimed. Who hasn't looked at an animal and seen it begging for help? A woman whispered, "It's his cub. He won't leave." Tao's loyalty was clear as day, and the village, so used to fearing the wild nature, began to feel something else, empathy. A child, with eyes as curious as Queasy's, stepped out with a bucket of water. The sound of the water sloshing in the bucket made Tao turn his head. He didn't growl. He just looked, as if he knew there was kindness there. The girl, trembling but braver than most, left the bucket nearby. Tao drank slowly, never taking his eyes off the manhole. Can you believe that? A child and a lion, connected by a simple gesture. The adults, now bolder, approached. Someone shouted, "We need to call for help." But the night was long, and Queasy was still whimpering below. How do you hold on to hope in a moment like that? The village chief, a man with a deep voice and calloused hands, grabbed his radio. The crackle of the device cut through the air as he called the rangers. "It's a lion. He won't leave his cub," he said, in a tone that suggested he'd seen something bigger than himself. Tao kept his vigil, his tail thumping the ground like an anxious metronome. He didn't eat, didn't sleep, just protected. The sacrifice of a father who won't give up hits you hard, doesn't it? If this story's touching your heart, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any stories like this. But what would the villagers do until the rangers arrived? The night wore on, and the savanna's chill began to creep in. The sound of crickets chirping in the distance seemed to mock the tension. Tao lay by the manhole, his muzzle almost inside the hole, as if he could reach Queasy by sheer will. The villagers, now gathered, brought flashlights and blankets, forming a circle of light around the lion. An old woman murmured, "It's like a sign from the universe." The interspecies connection there, humans and a lion, united by a trapped cub, was something you could feel in the air. But time was running out, and Queasy was getting weaker. Would the rangers make it in time to save the little one? The dawn brought a light breeze carrying the scent of dew, a faint relief after the tense night. Tao was still there, lying by the manhole, eyes locked on the hole where Queasy whimpered. The sound of the rangers' tires crunching on the dry earth made the villagers look up. 3 jeeps pulled in, kicking up dust that danced in the rising sun. A young ranger, Tabo, stepped out with a rope in hand, his face serious but with a spark of determination. Have you ever seen someone risk everything for an animal? The whole village held its breath as Tao, exhausted, growled softly, as if saying, "Do it right." The rescue was starting, but time was cruel. The rangers knew they had to act fast but carefully. Tao was a lion, after all, and the instinct to protect pulsed in every muscle. A veterinarian, Dr. Lindio, prepared a tranquilizer, the click of the syringe echoing like a warning. "Easy, big guy," she whispered, aiming with precision. Tao fell gently, his mane splayed on the ground like a crown. The crowd sighed, relieved but heartsick. Who wouldn't feel a lump in their throat seeing such a strong father sedated for his son's sake? Tabo tied the rope around his waist, glanced at the manhole, and descended, guided by Queasy's faint whimpers. Every second felt like forever. Down below, the air was damp, with a muffled echo that amplified every move. Tabo found Queasy curled up, eyes shining in the dark. The cub, though weak, wagged his tail at the sight of the ranger. "You're a brave one, aren't you?" Tabo murmured, wrapping Queasy in a cloth. Outside, the villagers formed a semicircle, the silence broken only by the rustle of clothes in the wind. When Tabo emerged, holding the cub, a cheer erupted from the crowd. Queasy, dirty but alive, was placed beside Tao, still sedated. The companionship between father and son was so strong it seemed to charge the air with emotion. Tao began to stir, his tail twitching before his eyes opened. The sound of his low rumble shook the ground, and Queasy, as if he knew, licked his father's muzzle. The village burst into applause, some crying, others laughing. Dr. Lindio, tears in her eyes, whispered, "They stayed together all night. That's a miracle." Have you ever felt a moment that seems bigger than the world? The interspecies connection there, humans, lion, cub, was something no one would forget. But how do you care for two lions so scarred by their journey? What would come next for Tao and Queasy? The rangers decided to take father and son to a nearby sanctuary. The jeep's engine roared, mingling with the villagers' emotional murmurs. An elderly woman, a colorful scarf on her head, raised her hands and said, "Thank you for showing us what love is." Tao, still groggy, rested his head on Queasy in the transport, as if he'd never let him go. The village faded behind, but the story was just beginning. How would these two survivors adapt to a new home? What did the future hold for them? The sanctuary was an oasis in the savanna, with the sound of acacia leaves swaying in the breeze like a lullaby. Tao and Queasy arrived exhausted, carried in a jeep that smelled of diesel and hope. The cub, with muddy paws, already showed signs of life, nibbling at the rope holding him. Tao, slower, still bore the journey's weight in his sunken eyes. The sanctuary's caretakers, used to injured animals, paused to watch. "This father's special," one said, as Tao lay protectively beside Queasy. Have you ever seen an animal that seems to carry the dignity of a king? Their story was already stirring everyone there. Queasy recovered quickly, as if the manhole fall was just a passing adventure. He ran around the enclosure, chasing butterflies, his tail waving like a flag of joy. The sound of his little leaps on the dry grass made the caretakers laugh, but Tao needed time. He limped, scars from the drought marking his body. Still, he never took his eyes off the cub. Sometimes, Queasy nestled into his father's mane, and they'd stay quiet, as if talking without words. Who hasn't felt an emptiness only an animal can fill? Their companionship was a reminder that love doesn't need words. The caretakers soon nicknamed them the survivors. The name stuck, and their story spread. A veterinarian, Dr. Amara, spent hours with them, noting every step forward. The smell of antiseptic lingered as she treated Tao's wounds. "This lion didn't give up, and neither will we," she said with a smile. The whole village was talking about the duo, and messages came from afar, asking for updates. It was as if Tao and Queasy had become a symbol of hope. Ever think about how an animal can bring so many people together? But the sanctuary was just a step. What did the future hold for them? Word of their story reached an American film crew. They arrived with cameras and microphones, the hum of their equipment mixing with the sanctuary's birdsong. They wanted to capture every detail, how Tao licked Queasy's muzzle, how the cub chased a ball. Dr. Angela Hart, a feline expert, came along and was speechless. "This isn't a show. It's a miracle," she said, eyes misty. Tao's animal dignity, even after so much suffering, was undeniable. but were they ready to return to the wild? The sanctuary began planning their transfer to the Echo Valley Reserve, a place where lions could live free. The sound of papers being signed and crates being packed filled the air as the caretakers debated. Tao was stronger, but still fiercely protective. Queasy, now bigger, seemed ready to explore. The idea of releasing them brought joy and fear. A rebirth in the wild nature was the dream, but also a risk. What would it be like to see these two, who'd faced so much, running free again? The day of the move was coming, and with it, a new chapter. The day of the release at Echo Valley Reserve dawned with a sky so clear it seemed hand-painted. The sound of the cage's chains clinking as they were loaded onto the jeep echoed like a sign of freedom. Tao and Queasy, now stronger, were together, the cub rubbing his head against his father's mane. The sanctuary caretakers, eyes shining, said goodbye like family. "They deserve this," Dr. Amora said, as the breeze carried the fresh scent of wet grass. "Have you ever felt your heart race for a moment that feels perfect?" Tao seemed to know something big was coming, his eyes fixed on the wild horizon. Echo Valley Reserve was an untouched paradise, with green hills and streams that sang softly. When the cage door opened, the creak of metal cut the silence, and Queasy leaped out, as if the earth called him. Tao hesitated, sniffing the air, his muzzle catching the scent of wild herbs. Then, with a firm step, he followed. Paternal love shone in every move, as if Tao were saying, "You go, I'll follow." Who hasn't seen an animal and felt they carry a wisdom we only dream of? They began to explore, Queasy running in circles, Tao watchful but with a new spark in his eyes. The rangers watched from afar, the hum of their radio blending with birdsong. They knew the transition wouldn't be easy, the wild nature demands respect. But Tao was a master of protection, keeping Queasy close as they sniffed other animals' tracks. Once, Queasy ventured near a thorny bush, and Tao pulled him back with a gentle grunt. It was as if every day in the reserve was a lesson in survival. Can you imagine the strength of a father who teaches without words? The duo adapted, hunting together, sleeping under the stars, free again. Their story began to echo beyond the reserve. Tao's roar, no longer one of anguish but of triumph, was recorded by a drone overhead. The deep sound reverberated through the hills, like a hymn to life. The American crew returned, capturing images of the two running together, the sun glinting off Tao's mane. "This is a miracle," Dr. Angela Hart said, her smile saying it all. The connection between father and son, forged in pain and hope, was now a symbol. Months later, Tao and Queasy thrived. The cub, now almost as big as his father, still had that playful glint in his eyes. They hunted, ran, lived. The reserve became a haven not just for them, but for the idea that love can conquer any drought, any manhole, any dark night. The rustle of leaves under Queasy's paws seemed to tell their story with every step. In the village? They never forgot. A sign was raised, to the survivors, who taught us not to give up. Sometimes, the greatest teachers have four paws and speak with their hearts. The story of Tao and Queasy, the survivors, is more than a savanna adventure in Botswana. It's a reminder that paternal love can move mountains, or rather, cross 40 kilometers of drought and dark nights. The sound of the wind blowing through Echo Valley's hills still seems to carry Tao's roar, that cry of victory when he and Queasy returned to the wild nature. Have you ever stopped to think what an animal can teach about never giving up? This duo showed us that hope isn't just a word, it's a father who never leaves his son, a village that comes together, a cub who runs free again. What began as tragedy, the loss of the lioness, Queasy's fall into the manhole, became a miracle. The interspecies connection, between the lion who protected, the villagers who were moved, and the rangers who risked everything, proves empathy knows no bounds. Tao and Queasy, with their animal dignity, transformed a village, a sanctuary, and even a film crew from across the world. They remind us that rebirth isn't just surviving, but living with purpose. And you, have you ever had an animal change your life? Share it in the comments, because these stories deserve to be told. If this tale warmed your heart, the next video YouTube suggests will move you even more, don't miss it. Tao and Queasy's journey is a symbol of enduring love, a father's promise that never broke. May it inspire you to look at animals and people with a little more care. Until the next story.